Okay, first off, we're not even dating. Second of all, I don't even like him. Third, he's probably running out of fuel soon, so God knows if he'll ever make it back here.
I'm back, bitches!
Welcome to WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. It's your old pal Jake. Hello, everybody. Hey, Jess Rush. Hey, Wicked Foxy Dragon. In answer to your question, I was moving. And on a related note, we're going to go back to having normal shows at the normal time and not random things put up at all hours. Well, okay, there's always going to be random things put up at all hours, but not only that. It's going to be the normal stream again. Really need to stop thinking I know better than the map robot that's telling me how to get between places. Christ. Anyway, as promised, we're doing an all Franny P stream. One of the members of the Wicked community is Franny P. She sends in clips often, and it's infuriating because every single one is exactly the kind of thing I want to do. I want to talk about. So I'm joking. It's actually what makes it possible to do a show like this on the fly. So we're gonna be looking at clips by Franny P this stream. So thank you so much, Franny. Let's dive right into it. There we go. This clip has been suggested by Franny P, a member of the Wicked community. I would dare say an OG of the WYCD folks. This is somebody we've had, we've shown stuff from on the show before. It's Farron Cousins with Ring of Fire. I'm a big fan, except I'm not really a fan of what he's talking about because it looks like Republicans are creating a commission to try to do that thing they said they would never do. Cutting Social Security and Medicare. Let's have a look, and before you get too bummed out, remember, America now pays attention to this stuff. They didn't used to. So this is an opportunity for us to show others the kind of trash that Democrats are running against.
Do you remember earlier this year when Republicans were up in arms because President Biden and the Democrats were saying they were going to cut Social Security and Medicare? I mean, Biden mentioned it in a State of the Union, got Marjorie Taylor Greene so pissed off that she jumped up and said, "Liar!" And we heard conservative politicians out there saying, this was ridiculous, the Democrats are lying that we're going to cut Social Security and Medicare. I'm sure you all remember that, right? Well, I hope you do. Because this week, during an appearance on Fox News, Kevin McCarthy admitted that Republicans have now started a budget commission that's going to look at cuts to programs like, get this, Social Security and Medicare. The Republican Speaker of the House admitted on the most watched cable news network in the country this week that Republicans were going to look at cutting Social Security and Medicare.
That is a bigger deal than you might think. It's one thing for them to hint at it in the middle of a press conference or when a reporter jumps them in the hallway. That's one thing. It's another thing for them to talk about it on a podcast that is only seen by the craziest of the crazy. It is something else entirely to say that on Fox News. That crowd, the crowd that is watching Fox, that is the crowd Republicans need. So why would Kevin McCarthy do this? My suggestion is that it's because it's going to be found out, and he wants to frame it. That's the only reason I can imagine that he would willingly tell these people what he's up to. Oh boy, let's have a look.
Kevin McCarthy, in his own words, talking about this new budget commission. And now we're cutting.
Does he call it entitlements?
And you know what? It's going to make some people uncomfortable by doing that, but I'm not going to give up on the American people. I'm going to announce a commission coming forward from the speaker, from bipartisan, both sides of the aisle.
Hell no.
And then he continued, blah, 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 blah. And he said, the majority driver of the budget is mandatory spending. It's Medicare, it's Social Security, interest on the debt.
He actually said it. Huh. Well, he's screwed. I mean, he just right now, Mitch McConnell is beat red-faced. Good Lord, I cannot believe let's hear what Farron Cousins thinks. He's going to have I need more information. This is too strange to me. I don't know why he'd do this.
And he said, we have to talk about the entire budget. So he did specifically mention Medicare. He mentioned Social Security. You know, those things that you pay for out of your paycheck every week, 2 weeks, month, whatever it is you get paid. You're paying for that. Like, that is separate from the income tax. These are programs that are funded through those payroll taxes. That's not a part of the budget, you jackass. Those are entitlement programs because we've been paying into them all of our lives, and we are entitled to them because we've been funding it. But Kevin McCarthy, after swearing up and down earlier this year with every other Republican that they would not touch these programs, now that dumbass is out there saying, oh, we're going to look at it.
That voice, whoever the ancient comedian was that came up with doing an impression of, like, the generic jackass impression. Oh, well, I was the crowd that person was trying to make giggle. It works on me every time. Fantastic. Yeah, I love what Farron Cousins did right there. I love that he's taking the word entitlement back. Kevin McCarthy and Republicans use entitlements as a way to disguise Social Security and Medicare and make it seem like something, those entitled people get. You know, the standard Republican playbook. Try to make things seem like they are different than they are. I like Farron Cousins. Normally, I argue against using Republican language, but I like Farron Cousins taking that word back and clobbering them with it. And I think we should do the same. Every time they call them entitlements, we should pause. Like, anytime you hear somebody say entitlements, that'll usually be the kind of person that believes they follow politics very closely when really what they do is subscribe to a couple of far-right podcasts. They don't really have any understanding at all of how any of this stuff works, which, by the way, is not mandatory. You should just know how much you know. They'll think they know more than they do, and if they call them entitlements, pause the conversation and say, wait a minute, let's just be clear. They're entitlements because we've paid for them through payroll taxes, and so we are entitled to them. In other words, we already bought it. I think that is for sure the way to address that. Good job, Farron Cousins.
Do it. Do it. Run your little commission. Go ahead, come out there and tell us right before an election that you're going to cut Social Security and Medicare. Do it. I dare you. I dare you to go to the American public and tell them that we have to cut taxes for the wealthy, that we have to continue funding the subsidies that we're giving to the oil industry, most profitable industry on the planet, and we just can't afford to pay for your Social Security anymore. We're going to cut back on your Medicare spending. Do it. I want to see that happen. I genuinely want to see them try to tell the public that. In an election year, no less. Because the commission hasn't even been formed yet. So that's why I say in an election year. They're not going to come out with the recommendations this year. You've got the Republican Speaker of the House basically planning political sabotage for his own political party. Hell yeah, brother. Do it. I want to see it. Because I want the American public to see you all for who you are. And this is who you are. Let's not forget that as he's talking about forming a commission, we're going to look at cuts to all these programs. 2 weeks from now, they've got a new piece of legislation coming out that is going to expand the tax cuts for the wealthy that they enacted in 2017. And if you're going to do this at the same time by telling people we're going to cut your Social Security and Medicare, do it. You'll never get away with it, and you'll never win another election. So, as far as I can see, no downside for the United States if Republicans finally embrace their evil plan and try to sell it to the public. Ring of Fire has fresh content 7 days a week, so if you want to be reminded about it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Hit the...
There we go. So, pretty simple what you can do with this. Just remember that excellent approach by Farron Cousins. If you have if you're trying to deconvert somebody who has really drank the GOP Kool-Aid, and they're calling these things entitlements, you can either do as he says or do as he did, I should say, and ask why they're entitlements. Ask what makes them entitlements. And you have the answer right there. It is they've been paid for already through our payroll tax. It's not an entitlement. If you bought a shirt, you paid for it, and you leave the store with it, that's not shoplifting. You are entitled to that shirt, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, awkwardly. The other thing that you could do is simply pause them and be like, which entitlements? And they'll usually try to duck and weave and say, all entitlements. All entitlements got to go. What is an entitlement? Why do you want to cut entitlements? Because we can't afford them anymore. Why could we not simply raise the amount we spend on them? Are you saying the country is going to run out of all money? That doesn't seem likely. So on, so forth. It's truly not that hard of a debate to have because most people are going to be on your side as soon as they have it made clear for them what it is we're talking about. Great suggestion, as always, my friend Franny P. Let's see what y'all have to say. Wireless Mike, good to see you. Patrick Kibido, what entitlement means? The fact of having a right to something. What Republicans think it means. The belief that one is inherently deserving of privileges or special treatment. That's it exactly. Yes. Yes. Oh. Chess Rush. I'm snarky, but mine is from weed and Benadryl. Fair enough. Oh man, oh man. The anti-corporatists, we should just use some of that defense spending to take care of us poors. Widespread poverty is a matter of national security. Yes, it is. It truly is. I've been looking at, there was I think a BBC article with like an interactive graph of what we're spending our money on. And true, we got a big chunk for Social Security, a big chunk for Medicaid, and an enormous chunk for defense spending. It is, I think, nearly as much as we spend on Social Security. We spend for fighting the wars we're not in right now. Most other countries can stay out of wars without spending that much of their budget on their military. We ought to learn how to operate the way they do. If indeed it turns out that the experts really think we need that. I would argue, though, that we know damn well that we don't need all of the defense spending that we have. We don't. In fact, I believe it's weakening us. If you look at what recently happened with the military equipment that was listed as being ready to go, and it had not been maintained at all. That is what happens when you overfeed this particular bear. It doesn't make it stronger, makes it weaker. We got out of a war, out of a 2-decade-long war, and then raised our defense spending. Makes no sense. We should chop that in half and just buy health care for the whole country. Wicked Foxy Dragon, I mean, what does it matter how much we spend? Who's going to send us to collections? Yeah, you can either worry about owing people around the world or have a military that's twice as big as the next biggest military. You can't have both those problems. We're still making tanks, but drones are cheaper. Yeah, I mean, I'm not even arguing that that we need to stop making the tanks. I'd love it if we did, but I'm not even arguing that. We just need to make like half as many of these incredibly advanced killing machines. We raise it every year, says Wireless Mike. Yeah, and we're sending, decades old equipment. The stuff we made and didn't bother using in the early 2000s to go fight off our near peer in Russia. Or rather in Ukraine, the Ruskies in Ukraine. All right, it's crazy. I'm going to literally have an aneurysm on stream if I don't move on. Folks, let's talk about our national budget. As long as we're at it, we may as well feature Mr. Sam Cedar. Well, if we're talking budgets, there's a few people better for ripping in to democratic capitulation than Sam Cedar. He's a lefty from way back, I'm told, and he has really been a guiding light in heckling those who are on our side in the general election, and at basically no other time. Let's look at how he feels about the debt ceiling debacle. That debacle might be a little hard. I think Biden did a good job executing the strategy he was trying to execute. We just disagree on whether or not he should have been negotiating with these devils in the first place. Let's listen to the Majority Report breakdown.
I know 15 weeks is not where any.
This is not that. Let's try this instead. Stand by. great. It's great TV, folks. Hey, there we
Sometimes
go.
I think it's very hard for people to really understand how incompetent politicians can sometimes be. I mean, honestly, I've used this example many times before, but back in the days when we were at Air America, which was the radio network, people would send us emails saying like, we think there's a mole working in your place because, and I thought like, this is actually not an irrational reaction to have because I'm inside this building and it's hard for me to believe the level of incompetence I'm witnessing. And I can't help but think that that's what's going on here. And you wrote a piece yesterday dealing with that. Let's just start with that when we're talking about the debt ceiling. Your assessment of like why we are watching this like slow motion debacle happen coming out of the White House.
Yeah, I mean,
Before this man who is significantly more accomplished than I, who is about to rag on him, gets into it, I do need to just rag on journalists in general. Hey, folks, fellas, ladies, when you're going to do an interview, could you just please stop using those freaking college kid headphones with the built-in mic? I understand if you're like a scientist or something, or an actual college kid, or if your profession isn't necessarily being on camera. And granted, this is a person who writes for a living. But a microphone costs about $60, and it doesn't go every time you scratch your neck. And if I hear it this time, I'm gonna laugh actually. But there's my pettiness for the day. Got to fill that quota.
I mean, there's many different places that you
Right
can
away.
start, but I think one key place to just start is Biden himself. So much of what Biden has come with into his administration, for good and for ill, has been his quote unquote lessons that he's taken from being a first-hand witness to what was going on in the Obama administration. And in one example, that was good. He was absolutely convinced that we should just get out of Afghanistan. That was the last thing he'd really thought about that subject, and he just had stuck with that and got out despite the chattering classes all screaming against it. So in that example, it was good. In the debt ceiling example, it's not so good. So the last time he paid attention, 2011.
Gotta eat my words. It says right on the bottom, he's an economist. He's not a journalist. Okay, words eaten. Apologies.
That was seen as, didn't go well in a certain sense, although there was political advantage in the idea of that somehow that had some relation to Obama getting elected. I'll get back to that. But then in 2013, after Obama wins, the Republicans are weakened. The sort of like Tea Party energy wave is in a complicated, different place. And Biden looks at that, remembers that period, and thinks, well, the debt ceiling increases then were mostly clean debt ceiling increases. There was like a little bit of like putting congressmen's wages into escrow, congresspeople's wages into escrow. There was a little bit of like, let's create a bipartisan conference on the debt, blah blah blah. But for the most part, they did not successfully use the debt ceiling as a chip to get cuts. That wasn't what they were able to do with it, and other things were going on, like the government shutdown. But they weren't able to use the debt ceiling as this big hostage speech in 2013. And so that's the last time Biden's really, really thought about these issues. So Biden's thought is, well, let's just do 2013 again. And that's where this idea of not doing any negotiations come from. If we just say we won't negotiate, that's a position of strength. They'll fold over like they did in 2013. And
Okay, well, I don't know that he necessarily went that far, but he's not wrong. I mean, if you're talking like the basics of of a negotiation of any sort, if you start by saying, I'm not negotiating on this, you can certainly argue that that's going to make it so that the very negotiation, as Lawrence O'Donnell was pointing out, the very negotiation can be seen as a victory, particularly if the party you're entering into this negotiation with doesn't really care. Can't stress enough. The Kevin McCarthy in the House is just trying to get through the day. I'm sure he's got bribes to take. He's got to try to earn them. Yeah, but I don't think anybody really believed he was going to get much done with MAGA being what it is.
And that's really the core issue is this, that we're in a very different political situation, that Trump happens, that the transformation of the Republican Party under Trump, and that Republicans don't feel weak the way they did in 2013. And also you didn't have very different style of Republicans who could more readily cede to business pressure, and there was business pressure to cede to. That was fundamentally what our core problem is it's a playbook that has not paid attention to how the terrain has changed.
And they thought that McCarthy wouldn't be able to get that cut, save, and whatever bill, his budget bill. They thought he wasn't going to be able to pass that, and they seemingly had absolutely no concept that we might need a plan B. And so we hear and you make this argument that it is really just it's a failure of strategy, it's a failure of competence, or however you want to characterize that, but it's not some type of secret way of introducing austerity, because this would be the stupidest way to possibly do it, it seems to me. Like, they don't get any political value out of it. They don't get any political cover, and it's not an effective way of austerity. It's just incompetence.
Well, there is a way. I mean, my story, I would say, is a mixture of incompetence and maliciousness, because there is a piece of it that is malicious, that is dangerous, which is starting the game of chicken itself. And you start the game of chicken by saying these unilateral options are so terrible, we can't do them, because if a unilateral option is viable, then it gives you, quote unquote, too much negotiating leverage. And thus, there's no possibility of coming together to do a deal. You might actually be forced to do one of you.
I don't know, man. This is why, generally speaking, I just think when he said no negotiation, I unironically thought that was a good idea. I thought that was a good entire plan. And frankly, with the Republican Party in general at this point, I don't see the benefit in treating them like they're a normal political party. They're not. They are not. In fact, I see a lot of harm in treating them like they're a normal political party. I think Joe Biden's plan here is to out-normal them and out-polite them. But there surely is a problem with making it seem like everything's fine when there's a knife-wielding psychopath in the living room charging at people. It's not time to put on the ball game. We got to deal with this. Step one is when they do stuff like this, when they threaten the U.S. economy, we say, okay, well, looks like we don't negotiate the debt ceiling anymore. I'm just signing it. If you want to object to this in court, fine. And then next time, we'll have to have this negotiation if I lose in court. But I don't think I will, because nobody wants you people really in charge of anything. At least nobody who knows how things work.
Your unilateral options, and from their point of view, they think that was the political loser. So the idea is always that bipartisanship is supposed to be the political winner, that there is some big audience among American voters for bipartisanship that will then show your seriousness. And
we actually need to take a page out of the MAGA playbook there and start communicating to our representatives that we see a deal made with these devils as a problem. Bipartisanship needs to be viewed as a political loser. If you work with MAGA, you have to have a real good reason. I'm not saying it's got to be verboten. Not necessarily. But you have to have a real good reason. And if you worked with MAGA, that will taint whatever you got done. The reason being, they make everything worse. And if you ever have a bill that they get involved with, you've got to scrutinize it real close to make sure they didn't put in language that, turns America into a fascist state or sells all of our children to a Saudi prince or whatever the hell. It's a problem. They are sinister creatures, MAGA politicians, and we need to disabuse our leaders, our political leaders, of the notion that we have any interest in bipartisanship. And I realize that they always make the bet. The people that don't like extremists, that don't like out racists, the people that don't like MAGA, terrorists. The people that don't like terrorists will put up with it, always. And they think that there's a bunch of people in the middle that will be pleased by this. We need to disabuse them of that notion. If you yourself are somebody who is a bit of a centrist, announce that to your representatives and tell them you don't want to see them working with MAGA. But regardless, tell your representatives that you do not want to see them working with MAGA. Not if it can be helped.
Realness and all of that. So there is malicious in the sense that they are telling stories, they are lying about unilateral options in order to get a game of chicken. And they're fine with doing some cuts to get there. If they ultimately at the end get a little bit of cuts and some there that that ultimately gets the deal, they'll do that and they don't care about who gets hurt from that. What hasn't worked out is that they screwed up the game of chicken. They thought that they could get a game of chicken, they'd get a deal, there'd be a little bit.
Real quick, anti-corporatist. Yeah, I didn't comment earlier because you were popping out for a moment, but you said Jank and Anna over at the Young Turks. I cannot speak today. I don't know what is happening. Over at the Young Turks, are black-pilled on the debt ceiling debate. Tell me about that. I'm curious to know how are they black-pilled? Let me know.
The cuts, and they would look, and then that would make the Republicans look bad. That would make them look good. Things would work out. Instead, the Republicans are just not interested in negotiating. The Republicans are saying Matt Gaetz said it yesterday. The people in their caucus don't feel like, quote, negotiating with their hostage.
Let's play this clip for a second because I have some questions as to who the hostage is here that he's referring to, because it could be like a half a dozen different options as to who that might be. Here's that clip.
Pulling it up.
Oh, it's not just me. Thank God.
We're pulling it up.
Yeah.
All right, forget. The point is do we have it?
Yeah. We
All right, let's just read the clip. We don't need the clip.
No, we got it right here. We got it.
Oh, delightful.
So this is a semaphore reporter, Joseph Zabalos-Roig, essentially speaking to Matt Gaetz.
Would you say then the conservatives like yourself are becoming more pessimistic about the state of negotiations if, there's a bipartisan deal in sight maybe? Or how would you characterize the mood among your conservative colleagues right now?
I think my conservative colleagues, for the most part, support limit, safe, grow, and they don't feel like we should negotiate with our hostage.
Okay, who is the hostage? What is it Kevin McCarthy?
Oh my God. One thing I will always appreciate about MAGA politicians is that they're too dumb to lie, but they've chosen being criminal liars as a career. It's delightful. I've known lots of folks that are too dumb to lie. Nothing wrong with that. I don't think you're supposed to say out loud that you took the country hostage. But yes, I wonder who is the hostage that he's referring to here specifically.
I mean, it could be. I mean, I interpret it, and I think this is straightforward, that the hostage is Biden. That the hostage is the Biden administration.
Is it the economy? Is it the economy broadly?
I mean, that's another, the economy as well as the hostage, but I think fundamentally it's Biden. They feel like they have him trapped, and they're right, because the Biden administration is doing everything possible to talk down the unilateral options, to get a negotiation, to force Republicans to the table to accept a deal with cuts. And the Biden administration has given up any leverage, and it's just said, this is us. This is our issue. We're screwed.
Wink, wink. We should all just do this. And the Republicans are basically saying, well, it looks like we don't just have to do this. They're now asking for going beyond grow, limit, save, or whatever the name of that bill is. And they're asking for more money for the military. So, they're just, and this has happened to Biden before in the past, where he tries to give up everything and they just won't take yes for an answer.
Oh, good God. There it is. Won't take yes for an answer. That's a really good way to put it. I would suggest that going off what Sam said in the beginning, our politicians need a better picture of how we feel. To some degree, I'm sure that Democrats are excited about some of the horrors that get done by Republicans because it'll make some of the same donors happy. But I do think most of the time it's just that they are tone deaf and dumb. And we should make it very easy for them to know that we're not into the idea of them making deals with hostage takers. We don't like seeing them work with MAGA. We don't like seeing them reach across the aisle. Seeing them reach across the aisle means they've learned nothing from the last, 7 years? Means they don't understand what's going on. They don't deserve to be in a position of leadership because we can't be led by people that have no sense of what dangers our country faces. There should be a political cost to working with these people. Inform them that your primary vote will be largely determined by how much you see the Democrats in office working with MAGA. And the more you see of it, the less likely you are to vote for them. So those issues which they are willing to talk with these people on better be picked very carefully. Let's see what the wicked community has to say. Yeah, Patrick Thibodeau, for the love of all that is holy, turn down the gain on this guy's channel. I assume there is an expensive soundboard involved with this production. Anti-corporatist. Well, Cinema accused McConnell of being the second coming, but other than that... Oh, boy. Yeah, look, I should be clear. When I'm saying don't negotiate with MAGA, I should, and this is in response to what Wicked Foxy Dragon said. She said, I guess it depends on if the hostage is worth it. Do we negotiate or not? When I'm saying don't negotiate with them, I do mean when you have a choice. If you have the ability to just unilaterally do something, force something through, you must. Because if we give them the option to be involved, if we invite them onto committees in the Senate, if we don't eliminate the filibuster because we've got Cinema and Manchin being bought, this is what happens. We end up in situations where in order to accomplish the bare minimum needed to survive, we have to agree to run our government poorly. And it makes no sense. Franny P, negotiating with MAGA makes them credible and normalizes them. Exactly it. And again, I'm talking about if we have the ability not to. Now, if Joe Biden genuinely believes that the president shouldn't have the power to push through the debt, okay. I disagree with him, but fine. If you're going to stick by your principles, that's at least admirable in and of itself. But he constantly brags about working with these people. And I think he's going to use this as an opportunity to brag about how he can get things done by reaching across the aisle. That's not something he should be bragging about. That should be something he must bashfully admit he got forced into. All right, I do have one more here. And it is from Bo of the Fifth Column. Again, this is an old Franny P stream because Miguel Franny has been sending some bangers our way, and I really want to just look at them. And if I'm being totally honest with you, there's a finite number of hours in the day, and it is immensely helpful when you guys send in clips, because basically I want to talk about how we can take that next step on various topics, how we can actually, instead of just passively watching this stuff happen, how we can change what is happening. And it's really helpful to know what you guys want to know about. So by all means, use the email. If you don't, it's what you can do at WYCDnetwork.com. Let's record this. The man's name is Bo of the Fifth Column, and he just did I think a day ago, a little bit back, he did a stream about Utah and libraries and finding out. Oh, wait. Hey, gang, did we already do this? Did we already talk about the Bible getting banned? I'm genuinely not sure. Well, interrupt me if that's the case, because if we didn't talk about this, it's important enough that I'd rather be sure that we did.
Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again.
Howdy,
so
Bo.
today we are going to talk about Utah and a book being removed. But before we get into that, we're going to start off today a little bit different with something from Galatians. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. The Davis School District in Utah, in the elementary...
We for sure did this one. All right. Well, fair enough then. Good. On the off chance that I didn't mention it, I would definitely recommend trying to get books banned. Using, if you're in an area where they're banning books, try to get books banned that folks who don't care for that folks who are trying to get books banned would not want banned. The Bible is a great example. Anything with a hetero white protagonist, just try to use their own ridiculous language against them. Mercy me. Well, then I'm going to do a video which I have been really sad about lately. Let's ban the art of the deal. Oh my God. I promise you, a school district somewhere has the art of the deal in it. Yes. Colleges, certainly. Somewhere there's going to be the art of the deal. Outskis. 100%. All right. This video bummed me out, but it's important. Let's watch Ali Velshi. Really want to talk about... Oh, I should probably record. Fine. Really do want to talk about, though, what happens when we do ban books. So the thing we apparently already did last night, awesome, was fighting book bans. Good. Here's why we're fighting them. Ali Velshi talked about the Tulsa Race Massacre, which I did not know about until it was a plot point in a HBO series. How sad is that? It happened in the country I live in. If you don't know what the Tulsa Race Massacre was, Ali Velshi breaks it down very well in this clip. Let's have a look. It's on MSNBC, of course.
Back in 1906, a wealthy black landowner by the name of O.W. Gurley purchased 40 acres of land in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and named it Greenwood. Greenwood's population was made up mainly of formerly enslaved black people who wished to escape the racial terror that they experienced elsewhere in search of a better life following the Civil War. Gurley opened a black boarding house and grocery stores, and he sold land to other black people, allowing them to secure their own homes and open their own businesses.
By the way, I note that is also something the Jewish community does. It seems to me like if there is a group of underprivileged folks, a great technique for protecting yourselves is to do that. Give the best deals you possibly can to other folks going through the same.
Word spread.
I don't know about the morality of it, for the record. But if somebody is underprivileged, I err on the side of them doing better in life, because there's already a ridiculous amount of folks being just arbitrarily kicked down.
About the opportunities, and black Oklahomans flocked to Greenwood. The Greenwood district operated independently, had its own school system, post office, bank, library, hospital, public transit, tons of businesses, restaurants, hotels, clothing stores, movie theaters, and barbershops. It was affectionately nicknamed Black Wall Street. In no time, Tulsa's Greenwood district became one of the most affluent African-American communities in the United States in the early 20th century, a community built by black people for black people. But what took years to build burned to the ground in one day. Word spread about black prosperity, particularly to white residents who resented it and saw the black community as inferior. There was a resurgence of the Ku Klux Klan. Lynchings proliferated across the country, and black voting rights were under attack in Oklahoma. On May 30th, 1921, 102 years ago last week, 19-year-old Dick Rowland, a black shoe shiner, was accused of sexually assaulting a white woman in an elevator. The accounts of what really happened vary, but when Rowland was arrested, an angry mob of white men marched to the courthouse demanding that he be handed over to them for a lynching. Chaos broke out over the next few days. The angry armed white mob multiplied and outnumbered a group of black men who had gathered to try to guard Dick Rowland. As dawn broke on June 1st, 1921, thousands of white citizens descended on the Greenwood district. Businesses were looted. An area of 35 city blocks burned to the ground. Historians estimate that about 300 black Greenwood residents were killed. It is
bizarre to me how little things change. I wonder, speaking of banned books, if To Kill a Mockingbird was in part based off of that. I keep thinking about Atticus Finch sitting outside the jail with a lamp so he can read. When a mob comes up to the jail where his client is being held, and they want him to step aside so they can murder his client rather than let the person have a trial. Whether it was based off this or not, that's such a conservative mentality to have. This person did a thing. So instead of proving whether or not they've done that thing, we're just going to kill them. What if they didn't do the thing? Nah, they did it. Well, then prove it in court. Almost as though they've always known that most of the stuff they believe is garbage. Conservatives are allergic to court, and by the way, that's why the news of Trump appearing to have his ass in the crosshairs in the documents case was delightful to hear today. There's really nothing to be done about it except enjoy the popcorn, which we will.
The worst incidents of racial violence in American history, and until recently, one of the least known. The history of the Tulsa Race Massacre was buried along with the unmarked graves of some of the victims. The cover-up began all the way back in 1921, when the Tulsa Tribune removed its inflammatory front-page story of Dick Rowland's arrest from its archive. Historians later found out that police and state militia archives were also missing. For decades, the Tulsa Massacre was overlooked in classrooms, even in Oklahoma. The state...
Just a little bit of snark, gonna toss it in there. Funny how those texts from the Secret Service after January 6th got wiped, huh? Makes you think.
has included the Tulsa Race Massacre in its academic standards since 2002, but the standards didn't say what teachers should teach and how they should teach it. So little, if any, time was ever spent on the topic. It wasn't until 2019 that Oklahoma's education department embedded what was to be covered and how in the state's academic standards. 300 black people murdered by a white mob, a thriving black community raised by white rioters, and it took nearly 100 years for that story to be adequately told in classrooms. But if you think that piece of history is now safely preserved in Oklahoma's schools and libraries, think again. 2 years ago, Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt signed a bill that bans the teaching of critical race theory in schools. Now, every time we bring up CRT, I've got to remind you, it's an academic theory that says racism is ingrained in the history of the United States. It's taught in college, not in elementary schools. It's a legal theory. But it's become the catch-all for the right to try to suppress conversations about racism in America everywhere, including in schools. The Oklahoma bill bans teachers from promoting the idea that, quote, an individual by virtue of his or her race or sex is inherently racist, sexist, or oppressive, whether consciously or unconsciously, end quote. Critics of the law and many educators say it deters teachers from discussing Oklahoma's fraught racial past. At the time the bill was signed in 2021, right around the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa Race Massacre, Congressman Jim Clyburn of South Carolina addressed the House floor saying, quote, as a former history teacher, I often quote George Santayana, who said, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. The Tulsa Race Massacre is a prime example of inflaming issues and ignoring history. They both significantly lead to the inability and failure to learn the lessons that history can teach us.
Hey, gang. Hey, gang. We killed a whole town when we had radios and cars, movies. We killed a town. I understand that we ask too much of teachers already. We nonetheless need, and this is not just, this is not right, and we should do everything we can to help, but we nonetheless need teachers to break this law. If somebody thinks that you're trying to make them feel bad by simply stating what happened, that person is abusive. That person is not an honest actor. That person cannot be involved in the conversation with what happens going forward. I'm talking about politics here. I'm not saying that if you're replaying somebody's mistake over and over to no point, that's a good thing. But the thing is, we kind of need to know why a town full of people got killed. Because we don't want another Tulsa massacre. So, if you are a teacher in a state where they're trying to limit what you can teach, break the rule. Get fired. Get fined and refuse to pay it. Get arrested. It sucks. I got $50 to my name. I'll put it towards your bail. That's not enough, I know. But we cannot participate with unjust laws. We can't all be the people that need protecting. The people who are supposed to protect us, that is the government. And they failed. So who's next? The bravest amongst us are going to need to step up. In 2024, that is when all of this stuff can end. That is when we can have sanity again. But we've got to make it as ugly as it needs to be. We've got to make them do the evil things they are threatening to do if we don't stop defending minorities of all kinds. If we don't agree to be ignorant, they have said they're going to do evil things. They're going to fine teachers. They're going to arrest people for traveling to have an abortion. We've got to make them arrest us and fire our teachers. And generally, we need to just refuse to accept the bizarre cruelty that these people who gerrymandered their way into leadership have issued forth, have said the law now is that we are going to be moronic, evil sadists. No, we have to break that law. That simple. It's not easy, but it is simple. Let's see what the wicked community has to say. Man, now I have bomb tracks stuck in my head from the anti-corporatist. Interesting. And highlight and right-click and search Google for bomb track. You know. Oh, right. Rage Against the Machine. It's just another bomb track. Yeah. It's really good. There's actually Patrick Kibido says, there's actually a great American experience about Tulsa that shows how the civil rights movement in the 60s did even more damage to Greenwood, just not as quickly and violently. Oof. Noted. More permanent damage. Yeah, I understand. Anti-corporatist, Rage Jake, 100%. Listen, some of those at workforces are the same that burn crosses. And it was true then, it's true now. And even though we're not using hard lines anymore, we are still communicating to beat the fascies. Jess Rush, we all need to run for local offices. Yes! Yes! You are correct. Yes, exactly. If some of these numbnuts can do it, we got to beat them. Exactly. Truthfully. Truly. If Lauren Boebert, if Marjorie Taylor, oh my God, Greene, if a child prostitute purchaser like Matt Gaetz can get into office, yes, we should. So here's the deal. Number one, it does take money to run. True. But if you got no money, run in an uncontested area. There are places all over the country, probably places in your state, where people run uncontested because their district has been solidly red or blue for so long. Here's the neat thing. If all of us agree that at the bare minimum we're going to run for House representative, so House is easier than Senate, we're going to be a representative in the House, and we're going to run in uncontested districts. We will also, even if every last one of us fails, because it's our first ever, campaign, you will still be striking a important blow, because you're going to be draining the resources of the Republican Party. One thing they love doing is not spending money because they don't have to, because the district is uncontested. Contest it. That's actually what MTG did. She found a nearby red AF district and primaried the F out of the guy. Exactly. So if it's very blue, you focus on the primary. If it's very red, okay, well, neat. You're probably going to be the only Democrat tossing your hat in the ring. Anti-corporatist, very good point. Patrick Thibodeau, to be fair, it should be "You Dropped a Bomb on Me" by the Gap Band from Tulsa. Gap stands for Greenwood, Archer, and Pine, which was the nexus of Black Wall Street. Huh! I did not know that. That's cool, man. Thank you for that. Wireless Mike, there were other towns that were destroyed back in the 20s, Jake. Black communities were targeted back in the day. That's deeply, deeply sad. And I'm going to hit the bottle something fierce this weekend. Well, I Google that and look into the reality. Well, tell you what, folks. Ooh. The anti-corporatist came in with her millions she got from her daddy and blew him away. Was a new district or something. But my point, to that real quick before we scoot, you really can run with not a dime. You can. A lot of districts are not huge. If you got feet and a mouth, you're good. In fact, you don't even need the feet if you got a reliable wheelchair. I won't pretend like it's going to be easy or that you're even likely to win. But if you run in an uncontested district, first of all, if it's a blue one, the Democratic Party will have to give you a certain amount of money. But if it is a red one, man, oh man, just being competition who is actively walking around, knocking on doors, making phone calls, you got a website, etc., etc. It's going to be huge. It's going to bleed the Republican Party, and we need them to lose bad, which means we need as many people as we can scrambling for office. And hey, by the way, if you're like, I would be terrified to get the job because I would not want sit around coming up with bills all day. First of all, you don't actually have to come up with any bills at all. If you don't want, you can just choose to vote on them. But fair enough. If it's not for you, school board. Look at all the local offices that exist in your area. See what's coming up next year. Run for something because we need decent people running this country. And all of you, any of you, and all of you, I would put above just about anybody else in office right now. In fact, just by virtue of not being currently bribed by the people bribing our representatives for the most part, you have a better set of credentials, in my opinion, than the rest of these cats. Bobert's district is pretty much half of Colorado. That dude needs to beat her next time. He barely lost last time. 100%. The anti-corporatist says, whatever you do, don't watch the documentary Postcards from Lynchings. Now I feel like I gotta. God help me. All right. But I'll do it when I'm armed with liquor. All right. I'm going to call it a day. Your old pal Jake moved a lot of boxes. And my body does not take well to work. So I will... lifting anything. It's not built for that. Not built for much other than enjoying iced cream. So I'm gonna turn it in. Thank you very much for joining me tonight. This has been a very late version of WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. I'll see y'all next time.